Hey guys, how you doing today? Just uh, just relaxing after a nice long day. Busy day today. It's nice that it's busy, passes the time. Makes it go by quickly, so I can get home and do something important. um, I think the big news that needs to be talked about is the Conservatives electing Aaron O'Toole as their leader. Uh, of course, the joke that I like to throw out is Aaron O'Toole, perfectly named for conservative leadership. He's Aaron O'Toole wins the leadership. On a personal note, Peter MacKay pretty regularly came into my store. He still comes into my store. I was kind of pulling for him because he seems like a nice gentleman. Although I would be as ruthless to him as I am going to be to Aaron O'Toole and the Conservative Party in general. So Aaron O'Toole was something of a surprise win to me. I was actually thinking that it was going to be MacKay. But on the third ballot, Aaron O'Toole wins 57% versus MacKay's 43%. A bit telling that the Conservatives refused to use a first-past-the-post system. If it had been a first-past-the-post system, Peter MacKay would have won. Interesting that the Conservatives, who have been staunchly against a first-past-the-post electoral reform for Canadians generally in the general election, are not using it for their own election. Very interesting. But Aaron O'Toole, he's a veteran. Like, on paper, he's like the perfect Conservative candidate, right? Like, he's a veteran. He was a Minister of Veterans Affairs under Stephen Harper. He managed to seize more of the vote by swinging to the social conservatives, i.e. the fascists and the racists in his party, which should not be a good sign for Canadians. It should be absolutely a big blaring red flag alarm that a man who is catering to the social conservatives is the person who gets picked to be the leader of the opposition here in Canada. Once again, the media does us a massive disservice by reframing racism and fascism as social conservatism. That's the word that they're willing to use. This is the propaganda phrase that gets used for racists and fascists within the Conservative Party. You're not a racist, you're a social conservative. You're not a fascist, you're a social conservative. You're not a bigot or a homophobe or an Islamophobe or any of that. You're a social conservative, right? That's the polite way of saying. That's the polite way of saying that you're a bigot. And so Aaron O'Toole caters to the bigots in his party in order to seize power. Aaron O'Toole is another Harper, right? He's just another Harper guy. He's somewhat scandal-free because during the Harper administration, he was just sort of like as banal as he looks, right? But these banal sort of figures can be extremely dangerous, right? It pays to remember that Doug Ford here in Ontario lied the entire time that he was campaigning. He was asked many times if he was going to cut public services. He said no. He was asked if he was going to cut the basic income program. He said no. He was asked on multiple occasions if he was going to cut environmental projects, things like this. He said no. And then literally day one, like, I believe the first thing he did when he got into office was scrap the basic income pilot. So you can't trust conservatives, period. Over and over and over again, they've shown themselves to be liars, and not lying in the same way that liberals lie, right? Like, liberals will at least attempt to keep their promises until it is revealed that, or until it becomes obvious to them that it is not advantageous for them to pursue this. That's exactly what happened with electoral reform, right? The Liberals did pursue electoral reform, right? They did walk down that path, but as soon as they saw that it was not going to be politically beneficial for them to pursue it any longer, they abandoned it. Which was the moment that I abandoned them. Like, I was willing to give them a shot. I voted for Tom Mulcair in that election. I've never actually voted Liberal because I don't see any reason to vote for, far right conservatives, basically. So to me, but I was willing to give them a chance there. I was willing to say, okay, like they said, electoral reform, let's see what they do. And the second they backed off on it, I was just like, oh, you're just conservatives, right? You're just another group of conservatives. Because conservatives are basic liars, right? If you're a bigot, you've baked lies into your entire framework, into the entire way that you think, right? If you're a bigot, you live a lie. Like your whole ego structure, your whole existence is a lie. And the Conservative Party, the Conservative Party is the party of rich white landowners, right? Primarily the beneficiaries of the largest land giveaway, the largest government handout in the country's history. That's the Canada Dominion Act. Go look it up, Google it. And of course, these guys, now that they have all of this land that was given to them freely, which they stole from the First Nations people, they're not willing to actually, pay the piper. They talk loudly about a gravy train, while refusing to acknowledge that their entire life is the largest gravy train that's ever existed, maybe in human history. They were just given huge parcels of free land to do what they wanted with, and you can't lose in that situation. How do you lose, right? You have like a government-funded military to back you, to protect you from the people who actually lived on the land initially. Like, you get preferential treatment because of the color of your skin. Like, come on, you can't lose. And so, the party of rich white men, going into this next election, it's going to be a difficult... I actually think that they can't gain any more power than they have, and they only stand to lose, because they continuously approach, like almost issue by issue, they continuously approach each issue from a way that is dumb. Not only dumb, but just like intentionally obtuse. And contrarian for the sake of being contrarian, right? Like, they don't actually have any solutions. Just pick any issue, right? Any issue. Like climate change. In this election, finally, they have come to a point where they must acknowledge that climate change exists, and that it is a problem, and that it is man-made. Finally. They are finally here. That's a massive success for Canadians. And I should be clear, they are campaigning on that. I don't believe for one second that they actually genuinely believe it, nor do I believe for a second that they'll pass legislation that will actually help fight this issue. Like, we're at a point with the climate change issue where we need to be reforming our entire economy to a wartime economy. We need to be restructuring the entire way that we do business from the ground up. And the Conservatives are talking about scrapping the gains that we've made in order to put in either inefficient or ineffective measures, or measures that are just sort of on the same sort of tier. Because, like, their hatred of the carbon tax, for example, strictly ideology, like strictly ideological. They have no complaint about it on actual economic grounds. Not that they are literate in economics, but they don't actually have a complaint on it on any grounds except the Liberals like it. And like, if the Liberals were doing cap and trade, the Conservatives would be arguing for a carbon tax, right? Like, it's strictly ideology. It has nothing to do with what's effective. It has nothing to do with what's right for the populace. And I actually suspect that if the Trudeau government is actually going to pass a basic income, like if that is actually what it is planning to do, that by itself is going to absolutely dismantle and destroy the Conservatives, right? Like, once... There's a lot of people in the Conservative Party right now who are just riding the momentum of the fuck Trudeau train. right? Like they see Trudeau as this like great demon who is the source of all their ills. Uh, Forget the fact that they live in a province that keeps telling them that rugged individualism is what counts, while their provincial leadership like loots the treasury once again and privatizes yet another social service. The But when the basic income rolls through, right, like you're going to start hearing things coming out of places like Alberta. Like people are going to be like, oh, my grandma can afford her meds all of a sudden. Oh, my alcoholic brother-in-law is actually, he's starting to clean up a little bit. Oh, my my out of work sister, she's able to actually take some time, and she's so much happier now, right? Like you're gonna start hearing these stories over and over again. You're gonna start seeing, and how do I know that's true? Because I've already started to hear these stories coming out of the CERB, right? Just story after story of person being like, of people being like, yeah, I was getting really beat up, and then the CERB came in, or the basic income came in, and really let me plant my feet on the ground and let me get stabilized so that I could keep pursuing what I want to pursue, so that I could find my meaning. That the Conservatives claim that they care about, but not really. They only want you to pursue your meaning so long as they're involved in it. So long as you're selling yourself to a capitalist, right? If you're not selling yourself to a capitalist, then it can't be meaningful. So in my view, the election of Aaron O'Toole, and I can't get over that his name is Aaron O'Toole. Like, what a tool. Like, how is the Beaverton not hit on that, right? Like, his name is Aaron O'Toole. He's a tool. He's a tool of corporate power. That's all he is, right? He's there to cut your services. He's there to enrich billionaires. He's there to dismantle social services and sell them to the highest bidder. That's what he's there to do. He's not there to help anyone, right? He's there to help himself, the people who are directly around him, the Canadian landowners, and corporate power, exclusively. Like, if you are a poor person, if you are disabled, right? The Conservatives have shown again and again that if you're disabled, they'll just throw you under the bus. They don't give a shit about you. And if that's the way they're going to treat our most vulnerable people, what do you think they're going to do to you? And it's just over and over again is the case. And so it's very, very difficult for me to believe that Canadians are going to get suckered into another Conservative. Like, right now, the Conservatives actually have about as much power as they had under Stephen Harper, when Stephen Harper was elected. The only difference is that the left was collapsed under Stephen Harper, right? That's the reason he was able to seize power, is that the left had collapsed in its support. The Liberals had revealed themselves to be frauds and shysters and essentially Conservatives, so there was just no reason for them to exist. The NDP was not yet at its full velocity, right? Like it was still building under Jack Layton. And so because the left had collapsed, the Conservatives were able to come in and seize power. But the left has not collapsed here in Canada. We have the sort of mythological belief that the current liberals are actually left-leaning when they are not. But we hang on to the hope that they will do the right thing, which they might. For themselves, obviously. It's politically wise for them to pass a basic income now, just like it was politically wise for them to pass healthcare, right? They took that idea from Tommy Douglas and the NDP, and they passed it themselves. That was politically savvy and a smart thing for them to do, in order for them to maintain power for their capitalist friends. Because the most dangerous thing for the political structure would be an organization that's outside of the capitalist structure, like the NDP, to take power and then threaten things like private property rights, right? Like, we could collectivize things, we could nationalize things, for sure we could. We could do that in a day, right? It would be quite simple to do, in fact. But the capitalist class can't have that, so they're willing to make smaller sacrifices in order to meet the demands of the populace. And the demand of the populace these days is, I would like to eat without being put into wage slavery, please. And so, because Trudeau, I think, will respond to that, it's going to do massive damage to the Conservatives. And the Conservatives are not going to respond to it rationally. O'Toole is just going to march them directly forward in their ideological belief system. And he'll happily march them off the cliff, right? He'll happily. There's no evidence to show that the Conservatives are on an upswing. There's no evidence to show, because they have no idea. They have no ideas. They are a fundamentally ideologically dead party. Their ideas are to lie to the populace until they get into power and then cut all their services and privatize everything. That's the Conservative idea. It's a fraud and a failure, and it's obvious. And yeah, the Conservatives are just gonna, I think they're just dead in the water. We'll see. Politics can shift and change in a moment, and it's good now that the Conservatives actually have a leader who can stand up and say words, but he's not going to be that much different from Scheer, who wasn't that much different from Harper, right? Their plan is to dismantle the civil society and sell it to billionaires. That's the plan. That's their stated agenda. Like, I don't know what more you need, and if you're a Conservative supporter, better start reading, bud. Anyway, like, share, subscribe, guys. Have fun out there.